Amina, or another name that is very Khadija or Fatima, a name that is very Muslim in its terminology. I hear many people saying that once I changed my name and just put an initial, M, whatever, or I hear a lot of people changing their name to Adam, right? Even though the name is Ahmed or Muhammad. That once I changed my name, I started getting callbacks for interviews. But as long as my name was very predominantly Muslim, very much indicative of my identity, I got no callbacks, I got no interviews. And so we start to see this push towards maybe that assimilation, that losing the sense of self in order to enter into a workspace. But the reality is, if we enter into a workspace on false premises in terms of hiding or suffocating one part of our identity, particularly our faith identity, then we will not be able to stand our ground and be able to express that identity as the years go on, even as we establish ourselves in that work, because what you enter into in the workspace is often what will follow you around. So being cognizant of who you are is the first step, I think, in terms of entering into the workspace. But also, what workspaces are you entering into? So to go back to my upbringing and my childhood, as I mentioned, immigrant parents, their goal was to build a life here. And of course, to build a life here, you have to have a job that pays well. So growing up, my sisters and I were often told that we had three choices in terms of career. We could be a doctor, or a doctor. So, like many of you, I am sure, I entered into college, pre-med. I was accepted into a 7-year joint medical program. And there was just one track, that was the pathway that I knew I had to enter. So, we started the first semester, this was at Rutgers University, the State University in New Jersey. My first semester, when I got my schedule, again, this is the 90s, there was no internet, right? So we would get paper schedules at that time. Instead of a class, I was supposed to have an introductory course called Intro to Biomedical Ethics. And instead of that class, I had a course that said Intro to Communication. I remember looking at this and thinking, what? Like, why is this class here? This is not part of the curriculum I'm supposed to be taking. And I went to a registrar's office, all upset, and the registrar said, the Intro to Biomedical Ethics is full, so we put you in that class, it'll cover one of your cores, so just take it this semester and you'll take the Biomedical Ethics class next semester. So I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So I go into the classroom, and the professor gets up on the lectern, and she starts speaking with a British accent, which makes everything sound smart and lovely, right? She starts speaking with a British accent, and she's talking about, what does it mean when somebody raises their left eyebrow like a quarter of a millimeter higher than the right eyebrow? What does it mean when somebody is standing, with one shoulder forward and one shoulder back? And for the hour and a half class, I was fascinated. I couldn't believe people actually studied this. They studied the way that people communicate. They studied nonverbal communication, interpersonal communication, intercultural communication. And I was sold. So I went back to the registrar's office and changed my major. I dropped out of the medical program and said, this is what I want to do. It took me a little longer to tell my parents. Until now, I think my parents don't know what I do exactly. And they're always like, wait, what is it that you do? But I decided to study communication. Not because, and again, the 90s, so communication was a very, very new field. Not because I knew what I was going to do by the time I graduated. Not because I knew that, what career I would have, or what position, or what guaranteed job I would have waiting for me. Not because I knew any of that. I really didn't know any of that. But because I knew that this study, this pursuit of knowledge, was something that was important, something that was critical, something that had meaning. And it was something that I wanted to do. And so oftentimes when we enter into educational spaces, we're thinking with that end goal about what am I going to do? Am I going to make money in this field? And money is all good and well, but we also know that our risk is already written for us. It's already preordained. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows what wealth will enter into our life. And we are all familiar, of course, with the narration that reminds us that if our wealth, if something that is meant for us is mountains away, and it is written for us, it will reach us. And if something is not written for us, it can be between our lips, and it still will not reach us. This is our rizq. And yet sometimes we become so preoccupied with the financial element of our careers that we lose sight of what Allah Azza wa Jal commands us to do, which is to seek ilman nafi'a, right? To seek beneficial knowledge. And what Allah commands us to do with that knowledge, which is to essentially live a life in worship of Him. And if we are cemented in careers that impact our ability to worship Allah, that impact our purpose in this dunya, then we have to pause and ask ourselves, is this the pathway that will lead me towards Jannah? Or is this a pathway that is pulling me away? Now, this is not to say everybody go home and quit your jobs and don't work in the field that you're in, or don't pursue medicine. No, we need doctors, we need engineers, we need pharmacists, but we also need communication majors, and we need psychologists, and we need teachers, and we need those who are in fields that can also advocate and push things forward from the Islamic perspective that maybe traditionally, a few generations ago, really Muslims were not in that space. So everyone knows their own situation, and everyone knows what their responsibilities are, what their limitations are. And not everyone has the luxury of quitting their 9 to 5, even though there's really no such thing as a 9 to 5 anymore. I think with the prevalence, particularly post-COVID, of working from home and accessing everything, whether it's through our phones or through our laptops, or it's really blurred the lines in terms of our work lives. And when people talk about work-life balance, it's a bit of a myth. Because here in the US in particular, we struggle to find those boundaries. And I feel like we're always just like, let me just send out this one email, or it's Christmas, actually I can catch up on so much work. And it's something that we can often find ourselves in, where we're getting pulled towards work, and work becomes life, and life becomes work. Which doesn't always have to be a bad thing. If the work that we are working in is work that is pleasing to Allah and is a form of worshiping Allah, then we can incorporate ways in which our work becomes an integral part of our family life, an integral part of who we are, an integral part of what we do. But there has to be a recognition and understanding that our intentionality every day, when we wake up and begin to engage in that workspace, must be an intention that is set for seeking the pleasure of Allah, regardless of what it is that we do. Whether we are working in the healthcare field, whether we are working in a service-oriented field, whether we're working in a corporate field, but our intention must be to please Allah. And every step of the way in that workplace, we need to seek avenues and ways in which we can seek the pleasure of Allah. So to go back to what we were saying at the start, finding ourselves in situations and spaces where we feel like we can't speak our truth, where we can't speak of what we know is, from an Islamic perspective, we know that when we see an injustice, we must speak against it, right? And this is the weakest form of Iman. If we see injustice, the strongest form of Iman is to change it with our hands, through action. And then if we cannot change it through our hands with action, then we change it with our voice, verbally. We speak against it. And if we cannot change it with our voice, then at least we dislike it in our hearts. And so when we're in spaces and in work situations where we feel we can't do that, this has a very heavy toll on our mental and emotional wellness, but it also has a heavy toll on our identity. When we feel like we can't fully be who we are because of the hesitation, the fear, the restrictions around the space that we're in. So I will tell you, I'm going to share with you a little bit of a personal story. So after October 7th of this year, after the genocide essentially began in Palestine, a few days later, some of the American Muslim leaders were trying to get some hashtags trending, and one of the hashtags was Save Us as Children. And I'm not super active on social media. I don't have like a huge following or anything. But I said, okay, I'll post something. And so I just posted a little small blurb saying Al-Shifa Hospital in Palestine was bombed by an Israeli airstrike, and I don't remember how many children have been killed, and hashtag Save Us as Children. So a day later, I received a call from one of our funders for Cornerstone, our nonprofit organization. We hadn't received the grant yet, but we had received the award letter for a grant from an organization for $30,000 for our refugee work. And a lot of the work that we do in refugee spaces is funded by those of Jewish origin, those who are Zionists, those who tend to support Israel. And in the past, we never questioned it really, because we said this is money that is going to our organization to do good, and we can help those refugees who are primarily from Muslim countries with our Islamic Foundation efforts, as opposed to having this money go somewhere else. So the grant funders, one of the board members reached out to me and said, we need you to remove the post that you have on your personal page. And this is my personal page, not even our organization page. And I'm like, why? And the woman said, well, it's misinformation. It doesn't align with our mission statement, and we cannot have the leader of an organization posting things that don't align with our mission statement, so you need to remove it. So I will tell you, in that moment, I did have a little bit of wavering, thinking, should I remove it? If I keep it up, are we going to lose these funds that could help so many people? And so, after I hung up, I told my board immediately. I spoke to my husband, I spoke to, others who are advisors to our organization, and everyone said, keep it up. Keep that post up, because this is bullying tactics, this is, you can't give it. And this is the importance of surrounding ourselves with the ummah, surrounding ourselves with suhbah and advisors who, in our moments of weakness, because we all have them, in those moments where we need to change our name at work, in those moments where we think about not standing up for truth or justice, in those moments when we waver, this is when our support system needs to come into play. So I didn't remove it, I kept it up, and we received a letter, I guess it was a day after that, rescinding the award, so saying that they were no longer going to award us the grant. And I did have a few moments of panic, because we had already committed to certain initiatives and services for our refugee community. And subhanAllah, not even like a day and a half later, I received a call from the IRC, the International Rescue Committee, where a year ago we had applied for a sub-award, which is, the government had dedicated a certain amount of funds for counseling and intervention programs for refugees, and we had wanted to receive, a small portion of it. And I received a call from the IRC saying that they were so impressed with the work that we do at Cornerstone that they had decided not just to give us a sub-award, but or award us the entire contract in the amount of $1.2 million. And subhanAllah, when we say that Allah is Kareem, when we say that He is the most generous, the most merciful, and subhanAllah, I still tear up, because getting that phone call, subhanAllah, I truly felt this is a sign from Allah telling us, do not waver, stand strong, do not question. When you speak the truth, Allah has your back. And subhanAllah, to see that and to see it happen so quickly, and something that we had totally forgotten we had applied for even, and something that was unexpected. And imagine now we say that Allah rewards you 10 times, this is 30 times in terms of a reward. So I think it's moments like these that are reminders for us that we will find ourselves in positions at work, especially when it comes to money, in which people will try to push us into corners, to push us into spaces, to make us do what they want us to do, because, like they say, money talks, but not for the mu'min, not for the Muslim. Because we know that wealth here is nothing but a drop in this dunya, that our wealth is not permanent, that what is permanent is our deeds, what is permanent is our connection to Allah, what is permanent is utilizing that ilm al-nafi'a, that beneficial knowledge, and using it in a way that allows us to grow closer to Allah, and that brings others closer to Allah. And this is where each of us, regardless of what field we are in, regardless of what career path we follow, we need to ask ourselves consistently, what did I do today that was pleasing to Allah in this position of work? And it can be something as simple as giving someone a smile as a form of da'wah. It could be something as simple as, wearing that kafiyah and knowing that you are making a statement despite the potential hardship that you may face. It could be something as large as actually speaking about the deen, speaking to your colleagues, your co-workers, taking a stand, but not having fear. Knowing that Allah has our back, that if we take that one step towards Allah, Allah comes running towards us, and having that sense of fortitude in anything that we wind up doing. So I know we want to leave time for question and answer, so we've got about 15 minutes left of the session. So I'll wrap up my part here, and I would love to hear from you guys, questions that you may have, things that come to mind, comments, or even things you've experienced at work maybe that we can learn from. Jazakallahu khairan.
Josepha, for sharing, Dr. Ismail. I truly resonate with a lot of the points as a child of immigrants myself. I do find that my parents are often hesitant to speak out about the causes that they believe in because they don't want to cause any trouble, they don't want to be seen as others. But yeah, I guess I'll start it off with my question. In such a case, how do we convince our parents who have been, I guess, living in such a condition to remember that advocacy for justice is the right thing to do?
So that's a great question, and I think, first of all, recognizing and understanding the struggle that our parents went through and appreciating it, knowing that maybe their struggle was simply to carve out this space for us, and they could only do so by flying under the radar. So first, having that sense of appreciation and understanding. It can be really easy to get angry at our parents sometimes and be like, oh, why don't they want to stand up for justice? Why do they go by the name Mo instead of Muhammad? Why? But recognizing that it's a different time, and the fact that today we as Muslim Americans are able to stand up and have our voices heard, we have to recognize the roads and the pathways that our parents paved for us. And sometimes it was only by flying under the radar. So that would be step one. I would say appreciate your parents. Let them know, guys, I know how hard it was for you to go through everything you went through. But also let them know that times are different, because fear, and that fear of your future, that worry about what opportunities you may lose, or again, it's a normal parental reaction. So I would say give them that appreciation, give them that space, but also be selective. There are a lot of things about the work that I do that I selectively don't share with my parents. And my parents are older now, so certain things would cause them to be very afraid, very worried. So do things in a way that is meant to please Allah. Recognize that your safety, of course, is a priority, and not everybody has the same situation. If you speaking up in a certain space is going to cause you harm or cause you to be physically in a situation that really may be detrimental, you also have to be smart, right? The strong woman is also the smart woman, and there's going to be times and places in which we can, speak out and speak up, but we have to be smart about how we do it. So I would say appreciate your parents, recognize their struggle, even though it was different from ours, and then share with them what gives their heart comfort. But also, maybe they don't need to follow your Instagram account if it's filled with advocacy, and if that's going to creep them out a little bit.
Thank you for that answer. Definitely very insightful. So now we're taking questions from the audience. Feel free to raise your hands.
If there's note cards also, I think there's little papers. If you'd rather write your question down, or you're welcome to do that as well.
We didn't really get to talk about this, but I think it's something that we're seeing more and more often. I was just speaking to a brother outside when I was in the bazaar on the book signing table, and he was mentioning how someone that in a workplace on an airplane had worn a sweatshirt that said "Free Palestine" on it, and the people on the airplane kind of made a big fuss saying it was offensive. What we wear today is probably under more scrutiny than any time before. For women who wear hijab in the workplace, for men who wear even a pin, a sweatshirt with Free Palestine, a kafiyya, we are seeing again repercussions. Again, we want to recognize that the visual is the first way that people judge us. And sometimes, for us as sisters, our hijab can be one of the strongest forms of da'wah before we even speak, right? For brothers, our Muslim presence in terms of the visual can be one of the most powerful aspects that we can share about our identity. Know your rights. This is where I would say, all of us need to be educated in the programs that CARE, for example, the Council on American Islamic Relations provides. Know your rights now more than ever, because part of being able to stand your ground and stand firm, especially when it comes to clothing and dress. And the reason why I brought up what the brother was saying, so there is, I think, a lawsuit now and a case pending because of this whole sweatshirt situation. Know your rights as someone who is a Muslim American, that you have rights to what you can wear, how you wear it, and if that is challenged, like, know where you can stand and what your rights are. And it might be an uphill battle, but it's a battle worth fighting because you may be paving the way for generations of other Muslims who will be able to wear things because of a law that is passed, because of a respect that is deserved and is everyone's right in the workplace. So I see a question here. It says, what will we tell youth who want to pursue a career in music? Okay, so great question. So I mentioned the importance of spreading ourselves out into spaces that traditionally don't necessarily have Muslims. The arts are a space that traditionally has not had a lot of Muslims. I do think, though, there's elements, and this is something that we know, if we are pursuing something that is displeasing to Allah, if we are going to enter into the music field and work with, I don't know who's popular these days, Kanye West or Tupac, I don't know who you guys are listening to these days, whoever it is, whoever happens to be popular these days, right? And we are engaging in a musical space in which the actual content that we're producing or that we're working on is meant to turn minds and hearts away from the deen, meant to turn minds and heart to preoccupation with the dunya and with that which is haram in the dunya, then this is not a field that we want to enter into. But if we are entering into the field of music, and let's say many of you may be familiar with Awakening Records or Meherzine or who else are the Islamic artists these days. I'm not super familiar with who's out there, but I know that there's a lot of Islamic artists that are now Deen Squad, aren't they, like, popular, right? There's different Islamic groups, and again, I know some of them use music, some of them maybe follow in the footsteps of Kanye West too much. I get that, but I think there is, in every space, there is room for Muslims. If you are able to enter into the field of music and disrupt it, meaning find a way where Tala' al-Badru alayna can become a #1, top seller on the radio, then do it. Then do it. Even within that space, there is room for Muslims. But we also have to be smart and we have to strengthen our iman to ensure that whatever field we're going into, that our intentionality is there. I am entering this field in order to please Allah. And every step that I take in this field is going to be a way for me to draw closer to Allah rather than further away. If you can do that in this industry, then great. If you can't, then that's where I'd say carve a new niche. Find another space in which you can enter and do that in.
MashaAllah, wonderful answer for that question. The next one that I got from the sister side is, how do our young Muslims navigate visible faith like praying, hijab, and Islamic action, I'm assuming in the context of the workplace, solitude, safety, and intersectional identity?
All right, so I like this question about navigating visible faith elements, and it kind of goes hand in hand with another question I was asking about how do you create space in terms of salah and spirituality and dua in the office when there isn't a lot of space. So I think, first of all, again, knowing our rights is important, right? Being able to, in an interview, for example, when you're first interviewing for a position, so people will ask all the time for things like, oh, I need to work from home on this day, I need to have this. Know your own worth, know your value. Don't put yourself in a position where you're like, I need this job more than they need me, right? Don't be arrogant and be like, anyone would be lucky to have me. No, you have to strive and you have to do your part. But also don't be afraid to ask for what's important to you. So be very clear from the get-go in the interview. If they say, so do you have any concerns or anything that comes to mind? Ask that question and say, well, on Fridays, I need to take 2 hours for a prayer break. Would that be possible in my schedule? Right? Well, I need a conference room that I'll be using once a day for a 5-minute prayer. Is that available? Right? There's nothing wrong with asking that. So many times we're afraid, again, because we want to fly under the radar. Let me just get the job and then I'll figure it out. No, be upfront, And if you're in that job, I know a lot of people would tell me that, well, I pray in the janitor's closet, or I'll find, a corner under the stairwell and pray there. When it's a huge corporation and there's plenty of rooms that are empty, right? Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to say, this is important to me. And honestly, I have also seen the best employees, the employees who set their intention to please Allah in their work, have ihsan. And so many times corporations and bosses and employers see that ihsan in the work ethic, and they will do what it takes to keep you as an employee. So have ihsan in your work ethic, but also don't compromise that which is most important. So navigating it in terms of visible faith elements, I would say set your intention. Know that every action you do that is pleasing to Allah is an action that will, inshallah, draw you closer to Him. And don't be afraid, because the fear is what cripples us, right? Don't be afraid. If it is your risk to have this job, to get that promotion, to maintain, this work, then nothing will take that away from you. And if it is not in your risk, then trust that it is better to leave the position because they did not accept your faith identity rather than to get fired for something else or to get laid off. Because you're gonna not have that job either way. It's your risk, right? So don't be afraid.
Thank you so much. I definitely could relate to that as someone in the workforce. It was initially pretty daunting to ask for a prayer space, just like 5 minutes in the middle of the day. But thank you so much for the advice. So I have one question actually. So in the workplace, how do we advocate for ourselves and our values when people don't seem to be interested in understanding? And how do we know where to draw the line in terms of deciding between finding a new job versus persevering through the challenges, kind of like fighting for ourselves, like that we face at a particular workplace?
I think we sometimes don't recognize the value in our actions. Many of you, I'm sure, are seeing online now the number of people that are curious about Islam, that are asking for copies of the Quran. And the reason behind that is because they are seeing the people of Gaza, the people of Palestine, with emotional resilience that looks nothing like they've ever seen before. And when they hear Alhamdulillah uttered on the lips of parents, of siblings, of children who have just lost so many of their family members, they ask, what is this? What is it that is giving these people this sense of emotional resilience, this strength in faith, and they want to learn more? So don't underestimate the power of your actions and the value of what you do being one of the strongest forms of da'wah. So my take in terms of advocating and being able to speak your Islam is really talk less and do more, right? Show your employer that you as a Muslim are a good employee, not in spite of Islam, but because of Islam. Because it is your faith that teaches you work ethic. It is your faith that teaches you justice. It is your faith that teaches you to stand against oppression. And that is the type of employee that your employer needs. So have that sense of confidence in terms of how you act, and know that your actions will speak louder than words. So even if you're in a meeting and it's time for Jum'ah, for example, or it's time to pray Dhuhr, and like Asr, the days are short in the winter time, the Asr is coming soon. Tell your boss, hey, hold that thought, I actually need to pray, and when I come back after prayer, we're going to resume. And I say this as someone, so I worked for years in corporate America. I worked in Johnson & Johnson, I worked for a public relations firm in New York, I worked in academia, teaching at the university. So when you are able to take that stance in the workplace, the respect that you'll receive, truly it's from Allah, but you see that there is a change in demeanor and there is a way that people approach you that is different. And oftentimes it comes from that place of like, wow, like you really take this stuff seriously. And I remember people would say this to me all the time, like, and yes, I do. I take my faith seriously, I take my identity seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next submission we have is actually not a question, it's kind of like a little anecdote. So I will just go ahead and read it out loud. So it says, I used to work at a dental office. The dentist is a Muslim and owns the practice. Our office is located in a predominantly Jewish area. About 80% of our patients are Jewish. And after October 7th, my dentist told me to wear a hijab in a way that people won't know that I am a hijabi. She also said that it's okay to take off my hijab and pretend that I'm not a Muslim because of this thing called taqiyya. I told her I'm not comfortable with those situations because clearly our patients have no problem with me being a hijabi. Whenever I say something, she'll say that it's okay, I'm a Muslim too.
Okay, so that is difficult. That is difficult. And first and foremost, we make dua that Allah Azza wa Jal strengthens the heart of every Muslim who is caught in a difficult situation like this, and that Allah guides them, to an ability to stand for the truth and a sincerity and ikhlas in their actions. So even if your employer is Muslim and they are asking you to act in a way that is not representative of your deen, I would stand up to that employer as well. And I know it's not easy, but this is a situation which maybe Allah is using you as the conduit, as the means to help your employer. Maybe when your employer sees you stand your ground and say, nope, that's not acceptable, that I am a Muslim and my visible identity is not something that's negotiable, maybe that will help that employer. But regardless of whether the employer is Muslim, non-Muslim, I think that the same rules apply in terms of how you conduct yourself.
Yes, we have a question on the brother side.
Assalamu alaikum. So I actually had a job recently at a pizza place for a while, like about like a year and a half. And like me and my boss, we never really like agreed with politics. Like he was a Republican, but our politics never really clashed, right? There was never really a problem. But obviously after the whole like the conflict and everything, I went to the protest in DC, the really big one. And when he found out, he treated me so differently after that. He was like distant with me, never really communicated with me about like, getting a shift or whatnot. And the last day that I worked, I found out that he was like talking behind my back, calling me like a Muslim spy, or like calling me like a traitor to my country or whatever. And I really left there. I didn't really come back to work after that. But I just want to get your opinion. Should I have like done a little war or something? Should I have like, I don't know, maybe like confronted him face to face? Because I just left and I didn't want to go back. But should I have like, I don't know, maybe done a little more? In your opinion?
So, may Allah protect you and strengthen you and allow you to continue to stand up for truth even in the most difficult of situations. So I think, yes, in that situation, leaving was the right thing to do, but I still think educating him is important as well. And I am a huge fan of putting things in writing so that people don't come back and say, oh, but he said this, or he threatened me, or if you have this boss's email, I would actually send him an email. Very, cordial. I would even maybe copy if there's like management or owner or something. I would, if he is the owner, then maybe copy like if there's like someone who's right beneath him, like a partner or whatever it is. I just wouldn't want you to send the email by itself either, because emails can also be edited, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I would still send that email, even though you don't work there anymore. And I would start it out in a very cordial, compassionate way. I just want to thank you for providing me with the opportunity to work in your pizza place. I enjoyed my time there, whatever it is. However, I wanted to explain to you my reasons for stepping away. The atmosphere became very tense, and describe what it is, but also use that as an opportunity to educate. Because again, maybe this is why Allah Azza wa Jal chose you to be in that position, that this guy needs an education, and maybe you're meant to give it to him.
Yeah, I think I also chose not to do that. I think it's because like 2 weeks prior, my friend who actually worked, he's Muslim, he's also a Marine.
Okay.
And he was just like, to my friend, he's like, well, you're a disgrace to your country, because he opposed like the views of the American government, obviously. So it was like, my mindset was like, if you don't want to be educated, then why should I try, Like, I don't know, maybe like that's a bad mindset to have, sure. And like, have we tried to educate him about it? Yeah, of course, right? But it's like, if you have such a closed mind about that thing, it's like, why should I keep on trying,
Keep on trying.
Yeah.
Don't ever think that
that's
way. Don't think that way. Like, we focus a lot on the outcome, when instead we just need to focus on our role, what we're meant to do. So keep educating him. You never know what word, what sentence Allah is going to allow to be that which softens his heart. And imagine the reward if it is a sentence that comes from you. Send that email. I'll help you write it, okay?
Yeah, so I actually have a similar experience with my mother. So I've been looking for like a full time for it. Like I did some training and certifications, and I was looking for a while. And alhamdulillah, I did get an offer. It was very good, you know. I did really well in the interview, and I was gonna go and meet the people and go to the building. Unfortunately, the interview didn't end well because what they said was the company was based in Israel. So at that point, I didn't know what to do because I was really excited. I really wanted to meet everyone because I had, a very good conversation until, I found out about that, right? So what I did was I did go for like some, advice. I went to my brother, obviously, my mom, what do I do? And in the end, I kind of just like backed away. I didn't, educate them on what was happening because there was no any political talk, right? I just backed away. I said, oh, I'm not interested at this time. I'm sorry about wasting your time to interview. And I just wanted to kind of get your opinion on that.
SubhanAllah, again, it's a difficult situation, but if you prayed istikhara and you felt that it's best to step away, then alhamdulillah, that's inshallah, Allah will reward you for that difficult decision and give you that which is better. Again, I'm just a huge fan of emails and a huge fan of getting the word out there. Not to burn bridges with them, but I always think, I'm thinking of myself even as an employer, when we have someone from Cornerstone that steps down or something, I always like to know why, or if we interview someone and we gave them an offer and they reject it, I will always say, hey, can you tell me what it was that, made you decide this wasn't a good fit for you? I feel like if you could preemptively, even if you just through LinkedIn and you just send them a message saying, I just wanted to thank you again for giving me the opportunity. I really enjoyed meeting everyone. However, I wanted to share with you that my reasons for not moving forward in the process was because I am very opposed to what is currently happening in Israel. And you don't need to send your message with polarizing words, right? There's ways to communicate. This is why it's important to study communication. Yeah. There's ways to communicate in which you can reach someone without having them go into shutdown mode. All right, so we'll write that email too, okay? Inshallah.
All right, so this has, sorry. So this has been a very insightful discussion, but unfortunately we are running out of time. So I would like to ask Dr. Ismail if you have any last statements or advice for all of us and to make dua for us, inshallah.
Well, I feel that I saw one last question. So rather than a closing statement, I'd love to take the question. Do you have a question?
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Susie. So first and foremost, I would love to extend my gratitude to you because I am very grateful to join this session in general, and it's very eye-opening. Also to hear everyone's experiences. I just wanted to also share my experiences just because I also sort of recently experienced, I suppose, a little bit microaggression to at work. So so I would love to know your insight of it. So for context, I work within my investment team, and not only I'm the only Muslim within my investment team, but also people of color, and I'm surrounded by everyone's Caucasian. And so there was a time that it happened to be, it was about the Israel and Gaza thing happened a few months ago, and every Tuesday my team usually does a team status. And before we start off the team status, the SVP within the investment team was because for context, he's Jewish, and he was saying, my heart goes to the people within Israel because the attack of Hamas. If any of you would like to share, how you felt towards this, please come up to me. And of course, I didn't have anything to say. And usually, for my case, when it comes to politics or anything religion related, I never said a word when it comes to the workspace. But after that, after the team status meeting, I was about to go on about my day. I was at the lunch, and my SVP was like, "Oh, hi, Sandra." I'm like, "Oh, hi, Michael. What's up?" And he's like, "Oh, how are you?" So, "Oh, okay." I said, "Oh, I'm good. How's your weekend?" He said, "Good." And as before I left, he said, "So, Sandra, what do you think about the situation?" I'm like, "Excuse me, what situation?" He's like, "Yeah, what's currently happening in Israel." And it was very on the spot. And so usually at the workplace, I also try to be neutral in general. But I said, yes, I do feel really bad and very sad on what is currently happening in Israel. But my heart also goes to the people in Palestine within Gaza, that they lost women and children. And he was just nodding like, okay. And after I was like, oh, Michael, do you mind if I go take lunch now? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. And happened to be, it was the same day, I think HR put like a one-on-one with me and other associates. It's like a every 3-6 month checkout type of thing. And it happened to be, the HR was like, oh, Sandra, how do you like this job so far? I'm like, oh, I like this job, blah, blah, blah. And at the end, she was like, oh, so how do you feel about Michael? What is your relationship with Michael? Oh, Michael is my SVP, by the way.
Yeah.
And so I didn't, my intention, I didn't mean to like tell anything of what happened recently. Like, oh, Michael, he's kind, he's nice. Until she mentioned, oh yeah, so a lot of associates has been complaining about him, and then I was like, all right, this is my chance to share what just happened to me just now. And she was like, oh wow, how did you feel about that? Did you feel weird? Yeah, of course. What? I do feel weird. It was very on the spot, and then she asked, oh, do you see any hindrance or growth with Michael as our leader? And I said, oh, well, currently, right now, I don't really see like a big like hindrance. However, if he does like step out of the line, like after the boundary, then maybe I will. And she said, okay, thank you for sharing. But yeah, I was thinking, did I do the right thing by doing that? I would just love to know your insight on this. Thank you for listening.
No, Jazakallah khair. Thank you for sharing that story. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but I think it's hard when you're put on the spot, but I'm happy that you were able to at least say something about, we mourn all losses of life and we can't look to one side and not the other in terms of loss of life. So I'm happy you said that. I think HR reaching out to you means there's something going on there, and you were honest, and I think there's nothing wrong with that pathway. And may Allah protect you, and if this position is what's best for you, then may you remain safe in it, and if it is not what is best for you, then may He replace it with that which is better, inshallah. So I think we'll wrap up here then, because of the time, right?
Yes, so thank you all for coming to today's lecture, and Jazakumullah khairan, Dr. Ismail, for your time and knowledge. I think we can end this session today with a dua. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. So you have to here. I know
So it's upstairs in the bazaar. Table. So yeah, so I figured in my session I'll go hang out there.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. Sounds good.
That's not staying.
Yeah, so I'm upstairs in the bazaar. I have my books up there. I figured in between the sessions I'll probably grab a quick lunch and then head up there. Inshallah. Yeah.
I'm the videographer.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. I'll be there. Inshallah. Thank
If
you.
you need any orders, let me know. I'll be able to email it to you.
Okay, Jazakallah.
Okay.
Just letting you know.
Okay, so I will be heading out to lunch.
Yes, it was nice meeting you. Yes, salam
Because I was
alaikum.
thinking like, oh, hurry up. Thank you.
Salam alaikum. Thank you for coming to the session.
I was like, oh, just thinking for like view chairs, we could like add 45 minutes and then much more hours. I feel like awkward. Okay. And then like one, you're done better. I mean, so just maybe. Yeah, tell us.
Are you gonna pray later? Or?
Yeah, tell us. Yeah.
I don't know. It might just be too many chairs.
Okay.
We can assess the vibe and see how we show up.
Okay.
I'm okay with the but for trivia, I think this is really good. I just don't know what
Let's take it on.
about. Yeah. But I'm gonna go upstairs and make a slide
Alright.
for the left-hand chain. And then figure out a way to do an Instagram chain.
Okay, excellent.
You're doing.
I need to make an Instagram.
Oh, okay. I mean, I can do it if you're.
No, I got it.
Okay.